with that, let's see if Niels, always like the Twitter handle Cosmic B-Boy. So Twitter, that's at some point you got to tell us the story behind that, Niels. But let's focus on UnionML and BentoML, the integration. Niels, the stage is yours. If you have to present, go ahead. I don't know if I have slides here for you, but yeah, I do.
Sure. Thanks, Martin. I have a few slides, and then I'll hop over to the demo.
Okay.
So, yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Niels Bantilan, Chief ML Engineer at UnionAI. And yeah, really excited to show you this new integration that'll be coming out in the 0.2.0 release of UnionML, which should be coming out later today. So just to give you all a little refresher on what UnionML is all about, it's a framework for MLOps, and it aims to reduce the boilerplate and solve various other problems that we've come across kind of collectively as a team. So really what UnionML is about is framing machine learning applications, machine learning systems as applications and not necessarily pipelines. So as you can see here, you have a data set and a model, and these objects expose decorators that are basically these functional components that you as a user implement. And once you've done that, you can use it locally, or you can actually deploy it to various different cloud infrastructure. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you kind of a picture of what I mean. So currently, right before this integration, you would deploy training jobs to a flight cluster in a cloud-agnostic way. Obviously, you have to set up flight, currently yourself, and it bridges the gap between this kind of like offline compute data intensive workloads like model tuning and training, and very different contexts where you're serving, creating predictions and serving your model in some kind of serverless or web endpoint, right? So today you can create a fast API endpoint, a serverless endpoint through AWS Lambda. And so that kind of fulfills some part of like the quote unquote full stack, like machine learning application. And if you go to the next slide, basically what BentoML gives us is, we're basically leveraging all of the serving capabilities that BentoML gives us. So, to take a step back, BentoML is a model serving tool. And I've worked with it a little bit with this integration, and it has some really nice abstractions that I'll save for maybe a different presentation. But the long and short of it is basically you can train your models on a flight cluster and also locally. And once you're ready to serve that model, you can do so with BentoML, and it unlocks this cloud agnostic serving story where you can use web endpoints through AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, as well as serverless endpoints in these equivalent kind of cloud vendor products. So next slide is just the present demo slide. So let me switch gears over to my screen here. Okay, hopefully you're seeing my terminal and my editor. So a quick demo here. I've kind of pre-built a bunch of stuff, so we don't have to sit around and wait for Docker to build. But this is the very simple digits classifier app. I might have shown this in earlier presentations, but it's basically just taking sklearn's digits data set and creating a UnionML app out of it. So a lot of this might look familiar to you. The new pieces here is I'm importing this BentoML service, and I'm basically binding it to the model. And what that allows us to do is like automatically create a bunch of stuff that as a BentoML user, you would have to hand write. Not going into that, but basically you have to define what they call a runner, model, and a service. And all I'm doing here is defining it. I'm not doing anything else. And at the bottom here, I'm saving the model to a bento store. And so what that means is if I run this real quick, it will train the model and save the model. This is a BentoML model to this local store. So if I list them out here, you can see that I've created 2 other ones in the past. So the next step here is once I've saved my model, I need to kind of wrap it up in a service. And so what that means in BentoML terms is I have to load the model from the local store. It could be a remote store as well, but we're working locally right here. And this kind of like, I'll say just one-liner. It's just a single call to this configure method in the BentoML service. Basically creates a service, a BentoML service that, you know, I can show you the diff, right? But basically it'll be maybe 50 to 70 lines of code defining the API, what the input types and output types are. I won't show that here, but basically this is it for UnionML, the UnionML integration. I can say certain things about what that service looks like. So is it async? Does it support CPUs and or GPUs? Does it support multi-threading? And does the what the BentoML world will call a runnable, which is basically like a prediction kind of service, a prediction class, whether the inputs are batchable. So there's a lot to unpack there with BentoML. So I won't dive too deeply. This is kind of like the default settings that are forwarded to the BentoML abstractions. So once I have the service, I can say BentoML serve. And in the prototyping phase, I can just reference this service, and it exposes this .svc. That's kind of a BentoML convention that points to the actual BentoML service. And I can serve my endpoint locally here. So I have this request. Oops. Yeah, I have this request helper file, and I'm going to hit that endpoint, and boom. So this is cool for local development. But once you're ready to put it into some kind of more production grade cloud infrastructure, you basically have to build what they call a bento. And a bento is just you can think of it as a directory containing all of the source code, other artifacts, config, and a bunch of other stuff that Bento has standardized into what they call a bento package. And so in order to build this artifact, I have to create this bento file, bentofile.yaml file. And among other things, it says, you know, it points to the module and the variable, that an attribute that contains the BentoML service, along with a few other things, like the requirements of the service. So if I just say BentoML build, it's gonna build this artifact for me. And so the way I can list these out is BentoML list. So this is, you know, like just to show you a little bit under the hood, this is literally like a local directory with a bunch of stuff that BentoML has created for us. So once we have a bento, the next thing we want to do is we want to use this other tool that the BentoML team has created called BentoCTL. And what this does is essentially creates a bunch of Terraform files from Terraform templates that allow us to deploy this bento to some target cloud infrastructure. So that in this case, we're going to use AWS Lambda. So I will say BentoCTL init. And this will allow us to go into this interactive mode where I can fill in a few things. So I already actually have a deployment config file that it's going to spit out after this command. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So you can version the API. It has a name. We're using the AWS Lambda operator. You can use, again, Azure Functions, Google Cloud Run, and a few other things. So from here, I'm going to say bento ctl build. And 1 second, just reminding myself of the command. I'm going to grab the name identifier here. So I say bento ctl build with the tag of the bento, and then pointer to the config file. So I'm going to skip all of this, right? So it's going to build the Docker image and output a bunch of other Terraform files. Actually, while we're waiting here, are there any questions so far about this? Just about BentoML or UnionML in general?
Yeah, I do actually have one, but let's see if others come up here too. So are there any resources, any upcoming blog posts or any other information that you can share up front?
Yeah, of course. So I'm working on a blog post this week, but the latest, so kind of like the development version of the docs, has a Serving with BentoML page, and it basically takes you through this entire tutorial, and it'll point you to BentoML team docs that will give you some more details if you want to customize things. This is just really scratching the surface. So it's in the deployment guides, Serving with BentoML.
Fantastic.
So we are almost done here. So this is actually pushing the Docker image to AWS account. So it's going to output a bunch of useful stuff. Basically, we're going to use this bentoctl apply command, which under the hood uses Terraform to initialize a bunch of templates and apply those templates. So nothing actually much has changed. And because I've already created this, this function, let me head over here. So this is the UnionML BentoML demo 0 function that we've just created. We can see that it was just modified by the command that I invoked. And, I tested this, but of course, there's always the demo gods. Oh, right, I need to update the request endpoint here. So after calling bentoctl apply, you'll see a couple of useful pieces of metadata. This is the function name, the image URI, and I'm just going to swap this out here. And the first time you invoke this Lambda function, it always takes a little bit of time. But after the first invocation, it should be fairly quick. But this gives you a sense of basically UnionML. Oh, awesome. Okay, and then just to prove to you, I can send it some other slice of the data, and it'll give you some other predictions. So I'm really excited about this integration because basically, UnionML's mission is to provide like this basically full stack framework for MLOps. And so there's a bunch of work to do. There's model tuning that's currently not supported, but this is a huge step towards providing a very easy way of deploying your models via BentoML. So, shout out to that project and that team for creating this really nice set of abstractions. And yeah, that's it for my demo.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Niels. So maybe a question. So obviously now UnionML goes all the way to serving with the BentoML integration to the endpoints. And you talked a little bit about the roadmap. Is there anything else you can share about the roadmap or where you would actually request help and support from the community?
Yeah, so actually with this BentoML integration, UnionML is introducing this new abstraction called a service. And so this is a like fairly new territory for us here, but basically we would love community help with other model serving tools like kserve and Seldon. And as far as I can tell, doing some initial sort of like research on the ground, just like looking at their documentation, it seems like it's fairly common to come up with these abstractions of like a service and an API and like ways of loading and saving models. So we'd love help there in terms of feature integrations. The next big step in UnionML is model training and experiment tracking. So those will be the focus for the internal team in the next, let's say, few months. And so those will leverage, the things in flight world, right? So RayTune for hyperparameter tuning. We'll probably have a native flight tuner that's more like grid searchy. But then if you want something fancier, we'll just leverage, that and sort of, it's been a fun project to work on because you have to determine what abstractions to expose to the users versus what to either delegate or sort of like have reasonable defaults and at least abstractions to hide from end users. So that'll apply for the model tuning API as well. And experiment tracking will be another big one where we'll probably, again, leverage flight integrations like MLflow.
That's fantastic. All right, Niels, thank you so much. Was there another question?
Yeah, sorry, I had a question, comment. I think what Niels has shown is just, sorry. Oh, my name's Ketan, by the way. Sorry. I think I've been working a little bit with Niels as he's been doing the BentoML integration, and it's really turned out awesome. But we have plans to bring BentoML sort of integration into as an example integration into Flight for serving. It will leverage whatever we have done with UnionML kind of interplay. But the other cool part is, I think our goal with Flight has been to be the pipe that you take your data, transform them into models, and finally deploy them that matches your production schedule. So if people are interested in how we are thinking of doing that, it involves using human in the loop stuff that's actually complete now, going to be available soon, and BentoML and Flight. Then yeah, let us know. We would love to have a chat and share our RFC soon. And I think there is a small prototype that Niels already has, and we are just waiting to finalize some other bits before we write the RFC. So cool.
Yeah. Thanks, Ketan.
Awesome. Great comment. Thanks, Ketan. It's lovely to see this project moving forward and actually really getting the bigger vision that Ketan, you and also Niels, you had about going really end to end and having this abstraction on top that makes it so much easier to use an orchestrator in an ML setting. So I always feel like this is really built from the ground up versus the top-down approach where you have a really solid scalable orchestrator under the hood and you can do really abstracted with little code and little effort, really cool things. So great job there.